We are honored to have lead these discussions licensed attorney and professional fiduciary Darby Jones, a member of the Florida and Maryland Bar. Darby serves on the Executive Council of the Real Property Probate Trust Law section of the Florida Bar and is a registered professional guardian. Darby is also the founder and executive director of the Professional Fiduciary Council of Florida. In today's session, Conquering the Clutter Chaos, we're going to discuss how best to sort through our loved ones or even our own belongings, identify key items to look for, and where we can turn for help. Darby, what can you share to help us wade through the sea of stuff?
I can share a lot, and we're going to share a lot today. And I also have a surprise. We have a guest speaker who's going to also share a lot of important information and stories. But first, I just want to tee it up and tell you that as a professional fiduciary and dealing with lots of estates and families across the country, it is a very common and challenging problem to deal with people's stuff. And we all have stuff. I've seen a lot of good stuff, and I've seen a lot of really bad stuff. So today we're going to talk about how you deal with that stuff. It's changing rapidly. It's not like it used to be at all. It can be very overwhelming when you're all of a sudden saddled with having to take care of someone's estate, or maybe you're moving from a huge house to a smaller house, or you're moving into a condominium or whatever. So there's a variety of things that you have to know, and we're going to help you prepare for that. And before we get any further, I've got Leanne Moore here. I'm going to let her introduce herself so she can tell you what to do, when to do it, how much it costs. We're going to talk about a lot. So Leanne, please introduce yourself.
Thank you. I'm Leanne Moore. I am a senior move manager, and I serve the Tampa Bay area of Florida. What's a senior move manager? Well, we are the professionals who help with the physically and the emotionally overwhelming details associated with aging in place, downsizing and moving, or when somebody is dealing with a house full or a storage unit full of stuff. There is a national association of senior move managers with companies just like mine all around the country. Our website is NASM, NASMM.org. And if you want to find a senior move manager who serves your area, you can simply go to that website. I think Michelle might help facilitate that website, and you can put in a zip code and find a senior move manager who can help you. We all have a little bit different business model. I'm a one-woman operation. Some people focus just strictly on moving and getting someone packed up and unpacked and settled. Other people provide estate sale services. They provide clean out services. But regardless of the type of business model, we all have vetted resources that we call upon to help us with whatever the project is. We have movers, we have liquidators, we have fine art auctioneers, we have appraisers, and we have haul away companies to help us with the things that have served their useful purpose. A senior move manager is a neutral third party, someone who can put together a whole plan for a transition, whether it's moving just down the street or whether it's moving across country and having to empty an entire house after someone has moved or passed away. We're kind of like a wedding planner, or as I like to say, the conductor of the orchestra, making sure that the different parts come in at the right time. Oftentimes I have people tell me, I've never heard of anyone like you. The other comment that I usually get is, where were you when? Where were you when I had to move my parents on my own, or I had to empty their home of 50 years? So as I mentioned, and I see it's in the chat, check out the NASM website to find a move manager near you. So during our time today, I hope that Darby and I will be able to share some stories with regards to some of the clients that we've had and some of the stuff that we have encountered.
Oh, we've got the story. So get ready. But first, we have some really fun poll questions. So we're going to give you, I think there's 3, maybe 4 poll questions that we're going to ask you to look at and answer now before you all are through the education piece. So first of all, how long you've lived in your home? Do you have a full garage? And do you think you have valuable items or a collectible? Oh, gosh, I've got to answer it too, don't I? I keep forgetting that. Uh,
You have to answer truthfully, Darby.
I'm a fiduciary. Of course, I'm going to answer truthfully, right? So anyway, Leanne, let's get started with some of these fun stories. If you all, hopefully, if you didn't hear our episode from last month we dealt with the transition out of your home or staying in home called aging in place, or moving into an assisted living, or moving into an independent care community. And so this is a natural transition today, this month, to talk about, okay, if you've made the decision to age in place or to move, how do you do that? And how can someone help you do it stresslessly? So today, if you haven't seen the episode, go back and watch that episode on agingacademy.com. But then today we're going to talk about how to make those moves happen. So let's take it away, Leanne, with a story about a gentleman aging in place.
Absolutely. So we're going to refer to this client as Lonesome Lee. Lee was relatively young and he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's. He was also a widower, and he was starting to make some preparations to move to a retirement community. But a couple of years ago, we had some pretty severe hurricanes that came through the Tampa Bay area, and all of the residents of the retirement communities were required to evacuate. He had not moved yet. And at that time, he and his trusted advisors decided that he was going to stay where he was. He was in a single-story home. It needed a few little tweaks to it, but it made sense for him to stay there. They looked at his financial situation and determined that with a few minor modifications and additions to his home, we got him an adjustable recliner. We got him an adjustable bed. We've made some modifications to his bathrooms, and with him being a huge nature guy, we did a landscape renovation so that he could enjoy being outside his home. He is now also able to afford to have caregivers a few hours a day, 7 days a week, to take him places, whether it's run errands or doctor's appointments, or to go out to eat, or to concerts, or to go on a trip. He's been to Hawaii, he's been to Alaska. With his ability to be able to stay in his home, he is now living his life as opposed to being cooped up in an apartment where all they do is play bingo. So this was a good scenario for him.
Somebody's saying lizards. Okay, are lizards valuable? We got it.
Just the lizards momentarily. Don't give up on us, Mike.
And what happens when we both have a garage and a storage unit? Okay, that sounds like a domestic law seminar, but but you take the first prize, Marjorie. That's for sure. Sorry to interrupt you, Leanne. I couldn't help it.
That's okay. So one of the things that you talked about earlier was what happens if you do need to make a move, or you decide that the family home of 40 years is probably too big and it's just you and your husband or your wife, and maybe there's another situation where there's a family home and a spouse has passed away. Well, a senior move manager is another great resource for this particular scenario. And I want to introduce you to Martha and Mark, who were on the move. They were ready to get out of their big house of 40 years, 2-story. They wanted to be free of the hassles of home maintenance and the responsibilities, and they just wanted to be able to lock the door and go on a trip. They found a smaller villa, single-story villa. They were relatively young, so they didn't have any health issues at the moment, but they were planning in advance. So they found a villa, but they hadn't moved in a very long time. So they had heard horror stories of movers. They didn't know where to go to get boxes, and they really didn't know what they could do with the furniture that they had in their home. And as it turned out, they were able to take a lot of the furniture from their home. It fit perfectly in their new villa. One of the things that is so important, regardless of where you're going, usually you're going to a smaller space. I haven't met too many people who have gone from a big house to a bigger space. But regardless of what your next destination is, if it is a smaller home, a condo, or even assisted living, it's important to have a floor plan to make sure that what you want to take will fit, because it can be pretty expensive if you load up all of this furniture and then the movers can't get it in and it ends up being unsafe. One of the things that's so important is to be prepared for your move. And a senior move manager can coordinate all of those vetted resources. We have vetted the movers, make sure that they are licensed and insured. We work with auction companies, estate sale companies, and we make sure that all of these service providers meet the same expectations that we have of the service that we provide. One caveat that I'd like to stress is that if someone is going to memory care, it's very important to recreate their new space as close to their existing space as possible. It's very confusing and very traumatic to make a change like this. So that's one of the key things that a senior move manager can help with.
Well, let me interrupt you again here. I have to
Sure.
tell you, that is an incredibly important service. And I have used Leanne and others in this very instance where I've got someone who has dementia and who needs to be moved into a dementia facility, but they are not emotionally capable of handling that disruption or decision making. So literally in one day, we can't, with the preparation that Leanne just talked about, doing the floor plan, doing the measurements, taking the photographs, understanding what's important and what that person uses on a daily basis. And then in one day, I can take the client to the zoo, to a movie, to lunch, whatever it is, and come back and we go to the memory care unit and she walks in and she sees all her familiar items, the bedspread, the pillows, the towels, the same soap, hairbrush, except it is phenomenal and a wonderful way. I know there may be some people in our audience that are maybe faced with someone with dementia and their personality, as we all know, changes and it can be very stressful. So if you're in that situation, a professional move manager is clearly someone I would encourage you to reach out to help you with these kinds of transitions. So memory care really is important.
Absolutely. And one last thing to think about, that the most time-consuming part of getting ready for any kind of transition, whether you're staying in place or whether you're moving, the most time-consuming part is going through the belongings and making decisions. And sometimes we end up going down a rabbit hole, but we're going to talk about that shortly. So Darby, didn't you have a moving experience recently?
I did. And Leanne was a phenomenal help, not only getting rid of all the stupid stuff I've been saving for my kids, which was ridiculous, and just help. And here to Karen's point, she put in there that one of her biggest challenges is the procrastination, which I think we can all relate to. And I am guilty of that myself. But I'll tell you what, having Leanne on my calendar and knowing she's going to show up with that big stick, that definitely got me motivated and moving, and having someone show up and make me actually pay attention and go through things was very helpful. So yes, I've used Leanne, in fact, not just for moving, but as you all know, I am a professional fiduciary. So I serve as a trustee, as a personal representative or executor, power of attorney for many, many people. And so I run into lots of different scenarios where I use a professional move manager, not just for moving, but when someone passes and I have an estate where I need someone to help me get that house in some sort of order, where either the beneficiaries can come in and make their selection of what it is they want or don't want, or have the estate liquidator coming in to be able to value and appraise the various items. And also for me, as the personal representative or executor, I have to provide an inventory to the court. So a person like Leanne is a perfect tool for me to create that inventory, to create the values, to create the report that I would need to then provide to the court or the beneficiaries. This would go for a trust situation as well. So don't just think of professional move managers as just moving. They have a broad expanse of experience and can be very creative and helpful in a variety of ways.
Yep. And Darby, one other thing that I want to mention is that a senior move manager can help as little or as much as somebody wants. Somebody who might have the ability to do a lot of things, that only helps, the process go a little bit quicker as well.
Now, looking at the poll results, most of you have lived in your house for over 30 years, which I think is incredible. I was a little surprised at that, but that's very cool. And most of you have a cram-packed full garage. So it's I'm guilty as charged as well. So with all of that, it sounds like we've got the right audience here, and that you are probably interested in what a person like Leanne can do. But now I want to know, Leanne, can you share with us how much it costs? How much does someone like you actually cost?
That is the million-dollar question. And the answer is, it depends. Most senior move managers do a complimentary consultation. And we are required, as part of being a member of the association, to provide an estimate afterwards. And that estimate usually does not include the cost of the mover. But there are a lot of factors that go into an estimate. How long has someone lived in their home? What's the size of the home? How much stuff do they have? How much and who from the family is going to participate? How quickly do they make decisions? And what are the resources, or excuse me, what are the services that somebody is wanting to have help with? Do they need somebody to sit side by side and go through each drawer? Do they need somebody who can go up into the attic and bring the things down? In Florida, we don't have basements, but we have storage units. And so what do they need to have help with, and how much help do they want to have? Some people physically can't go through the things due to just some of the health or medical issues that they might have. Perhaps it's a family that is dealing with a house full of stuff and they live out of the area. Or perhaps they do live local, but they have a full-time job and family, and they just aren't able to spend the time that they need to either help themselves or help their loved ones. And as I mentioned, a senior move manager can help as little or as much as you'd like.
Karen, my grandmother never forgave my father for throwing out his Cub Scout uniform. Okay, you got the chat is off the chain
I
today.
haven't been
It
able
really
to pull
is.
it up, so I'll have to take a look at that.
We're going to have a lot of Q&A at the end of this. I can tell from this chat going on. Okay. So now that we all recognize and acknowledge that I'm Darby and I have stuff, and that we know who we can call for help with all of this, and how much it may or may not cost. Now it's when I'm going through my house, how do I know if something's valuable or not, or worth it or not? I over the years, I've dealt with so many people, and they think that thing in the corner over there is just super valuable. And it's really hard to break it to them that, nobody's going to want that thing. And so how do we know if we really do have something valuable or not?
Sure. And I think it's also important to identify and distinguish between what's important and what's valuable. So let's talk a little bit about what's important. Things like documents, their will, their power of attorney, those important legal documents, anything that is related to any accounts that someone might have, whether it is, bank accounts, accounts for paying the utilities. Those are so important. Passwords. We do so many things online these days that having a list of accounts and passwords is so important. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that they just aren't going to wake up one morning, and they don't realize that the likelihood that somebody is going to have a stroke and not be able to communicate, or develop dementia and not remember a lot of things. So having this important information together is invaluable for someone who might be needing to pick up where somebody is left off. Car keys, car titles, real estate documents, those are also things that are important. Things that are of value. The landscape of stuff has really, really changed in the past years. Primarily, we started to see a change about 10 years ago. The interest in things changed a lot when COVID happened, and we were all surrounded by our stuff 24/7. So things that people are interested in buying these days are art, jewelry, guns, but the biggest thing of value is real estate. Someone may have been told that their dining room set, albeit purchased 40 years ago, is very valuable. Unfortunately, brown is down. Brown furniture, antiques, they are a thing of the past, literally, and people do not want that type of furniture anymore. People are living in smaller spaces. We don't host dinners that can seat 8 to 10 people at a table. We don't have formal holiday meals. We don't even have, in my family, we used to have Sunday supper where we would use the good stuff. We don't even do that anymore. Thanksgiving recently has been Chinette plates. So we've, as a nation, we have adopted a little bit more casual and disposable lifestyle. Just because something is old doesn't mean that it is valuable. I noticed somebody put something in the chat. Value and worth is what someone is willing to pay. So it's important that we have a good handle on what are some things that have value to them. And I know one of our poll questions were, did you have a lot of collections of stuff? And Mike answered, what about lizards? Aren't they valuable? Well, they might be valuable to you. It might also depend what kind of lizards they are. We have lots of lizards in Florida, and some of them are kind of a pest. But that's a relative question. So some things that are old and have no value, we talked about the furniture. Let me also give you an example. We have a Waterford crystal wine goblet. Back in the day, valuable. Nobody wants to use this because it can't go in the dishwasher. It can't go in the microwave. And in comparison to a $5 wine glass that can go in the dishwasher, this one holds more. So which one are we going to use? The trend has been that if it can't go in the dishwasher, if it can't go in the microwave, people don't want to use it. Oh, and we didn't ask specifically, but things like knickknacks, Hummels, Franklin mint plates, Yadros, Swarovski crystal figurines. I lovingly refer to those as dust collectors. Those are not of interest to people anymore. So what I tell people is, if you have the good stuff, use it. And if it breaks, so what? But use it while you have it. Something else I want to show you is that some things that are old but have value. And I apologize for the light here. So I have 2 coins. I have 2 Kennedy $50 that are face value 50 cents. One from 1964 and one from 1969. The one from 1964, this might surprise you, is valued at $40. The one from 1969 is valued at $6.50. So I don't know what happened to my light here. Sorry about that. So why is the older one more valuable? Coins that are 1964 and earlier have more silver. Coins that are 1965 to about 71 or 72 have a little bit of silver. Anything older, or I should say newer, than 1971 or 72 are only face value. Sadly, all of those coins that the state quarters that were so popular that everybody had to get one and fill in the map with all of the coins, not so much. Oftentimes there were proof sets that the U.S. Mint sold. And 1964 and earlier, yes, but later years, not so much. I noticed somebody in the chat mentioned something about art. Art is very subjective. My experience has been that unless it is art by a well-known, very dead artist, there usually is not a lot of interest in the art. But a senior move manager will have the resources to call upon to bring someone in to value some of the art that that you might have. Leather-bound books are also of interest, and things like unique Americana. If anybody's ever watched that show, American Pickers, some of the unique things that they find, that's what people are interested in spending their money on. The way people sell things these days has really changed. Think about the advent of eBay. Think about some of the other online avenues that people are using to sell things. Most things these days are done online. Think about our purchases through Amazon, through Wayfair, through some of these other, we just, from the comfort of our keyboard, order it and it shows up on our doorstep. Back in the day, people used estate sales to empty out homes, and people would shop estate sales. They could get a really good deal on Waterford crystal. People don't want those things anymore, and so estate sales have really had to change how they do things. One of the things that I think is so important and needs some clarification, and maybe Darby, you can help us with this, is when would someone want to pay for an expensive appraisal versus just having somebody come in and say, what's my stuff worth?
Okay, good question. And okay, this is just too funny. Okay, we've got the question about the art, actually, just to finish her question, was she has art from a relative who another relative down the generation stream may really be interested in. But she's afraid that person may not even be around when the time comes. So what I would recommend, and not just with art, but give it away now. Give it to whoever would enjoy it now. So for example, if you have a china, silver, jewelry, art, furniture, unique items, watches, things like that. If you know a relative that you ultimately really do want to have that item, go ahead and give it to them, unless you're truly enjoying that. Many times it's sitting in a safe deposit box somewhere, which is another thing you shouldn't have. That's like a little miniature pain in the neck storage unit. So just give it away if you can. That way you have a lot less of mistakes or concerns or stress about worrying about that item during your lifetime. To answer Leanne's questions about valuation, it really, this could be a pretty complicated conversation. I'm just going to kind of generalize here. But if you are living in your home or residence and you are curious about the value of what you do have, go ahead and hire an estate liquidator or an appraiser, depending on what they're called in your area, and have them come to your house. And they can go room to room and very quickly and very easily tell you what the value is or what the presumed value is of those items. And there's no obligation there. It doesn't mean you have to sell it or anything. They may charge, by the hour to do that. And they could even go as far as writing up a report, an inventory, etc. However, if you are serving as a fiduciary, for example, if you are someone's power of attorney, or if you're someone's personal representative in their estate, you may very well need or be required to have a formal inventory and appraisal done. And there's fair market value inventory, and there's an appraisal value inventory, very different things. So, as someone pointed out, as Leanne, you pointed out too, a willing seller and a willing buyer creates that price, right? And you never know what that is. So fair market value can be very different than the appraised ultimate auction value. So if you send everything to auction, you may get a very different ultimate profit, so to speak, than you would if you just looked at an inventory done by a professional appraiser. However, going a little deeper into this, the whole estate sale landscape is so different today. Now, again, it depends on where you live. If you're in a very rural area, it may be a little more challenging. But what's happening today is you don't have garage sales anymore. Nobody goes to garage sales. Nobody's going to be driving anywhere to do any of that. Everything is done online. And so the estate liquidator company nowadays will come really with a photography crew and take pictures of everything, lots, stage it, light it, take pictures of everything, label everything, and then leave it in your house or leave it in the person who just passed away's home. And then they're going to post it on their website. They're going to have an online auction, and then they're going to schedule when people are going to come to purchase and pick up those items. And so it'll be online for, several weeks, perhaps. Give it time to be out there in the internet world for people to bid on these things. It gets a huge, much larger audience, obviously. And so then the day is scheduled where they then show up, one behind the other to come select the items, pack them, and leave. It's a wonderful process. And I think at the end of the day, you may get a little bit more profit, even though things are not as valuable as they used to be. Keep that in mind. But just understand the role you're in and the responsibilities you have with regard to the ultimate beneficiaries of those items.
Darby, one comment that I'd like to make is that oftentimes there is a cost associated with cleaning out a home or a cost for these various parts of a transition. And I like to say that the sale of things might help offset some of those costs. It's doubtful that you will get a 100% return on the things that were initially purchased, but the sale of some of those items may help offset some of the costs that are going to be incurred.
Now, Leanne's going to share with you right now a admissions sheet. Just gonna open all y'all eyes on what it is, how bad you guys really are. And while y'all are looking at that, there was a question, Leanne, from I believe it was Anne, who said she must have been on the website while we were talking, and she's looking, and there's no one within 100 miles. So what plan B would there be
Sure.
in that regard?
Yep. So on the NASM website, I was looking at it on my phone, so I'm not sure where you're looking at it, Anne, but there is a contact us link or a button, and you can send a message to the association, and then they will send out an email to, we have a forum, and then they will send out an email. We have some members who haven't quite reached their general membership status yet. Maybe they need a few more jobs. Maybe they're are waiting on their insurance. And so they're still members of the association, but they haven't finalized all of their criteria. But that message with where you are and what your need is will be distributed en masse to our members, and then they can follow up as appropriate. So that would be my suggestion, would be to go through the contact us button on the NASM website.
Okay.
So we have this, as Darby said, confession sheet here, and what is too much stuff? And the answer is it's all relative. I have found that the more space we have, the more we fill it up. And this list usually generates a few chuckles and laughs. You will not ask to be completed, and there won't be any names associated with it. But some of the things that that I typically see in most homes are tax returns of more than 7 years. I see a lot of kid clutter. Things from 40, 50, 60 years ago that the parents were keeping that belonged to the kids. Right. Cassette tapes, record albums, VHS tapes, but no player. Record albums are making a slight comeback, but people certainly are not spending the money to buy record albums that they were in the past. Photo albums, boxes of photos, and scrapbooks. A lot of what our environment has transformed into with the advent of all of this amazing technology. We stream movies, we stream music, we have all of our pictures on our phone, or we convert everything to digital. Clothes in multiple closets, and maybe some that haven't been worn in over 5 years. And a bag of bags of bags of bags. I know that those tend to be pretty consistent in many of the homes that I go in.
Well, Leanne, now let's move on to hearing something, a story about people who may actually not made these good decisions and did not get their homes well organized before either their death or incapacity.
Yep. Unfortunately, I will have to introduce you to Charlie the curmudgeon. Charlie and his late wife, their son passed away when he was very young, and they had a hard time with it. Grief was that void of their son was filled with shopping. They went to thrift stores, estate sales, garage sales, any place where they could go and they could buy things. Charlie's wife passed away, and then their house had become so filled with all of these eclectic and unusual multiples of things. But Charlie fell. He had to go to the hospital. He was in the hospital, then went into rehab. He had to move to assisted living. He really, really wanted to go back to his home because that's really where he was most comfortable. But unfortunately, there were so many accumulations that it just was not safe for him to return. And we ended up removing about 9.5 tons of stuff out of his home. By not going through his things, and kind of being overwhelmed with all of this, ended up being a very, very expensive resolution to get him back into his home. Now, on the other hand, I want to introduce you to Prepared Patty. She took a completely different tact, and she was very in charge of her things. She was a widow, no living children. She had some health issues, but she knew what she wanted to do with her things and where she wanted them to go. And I worked side by side with her to document what she wanted to go where, and the items that she was ready to part with at that time. I made arrangements to get them packed up and shipped off to the recipients. Upon her passing, I had my marching orders of where things were to be sent to. The one thing that had not been reviewed were all of the photo albums worth of pictures from all of their travels and generational family photos. So that was the one thing that there had not been a lot of consideration in reviewing those.
Well, and also, I want to answer another couple of quick questions here. Someone mentioned pets. And just so you know, again, as a professional fiduciary, I've dealt with lots of tragic, emotionally upsetting, horrible situations between families and individuals and all kinds of things. And sometimes, well, for the most part, a lot of it isn't all that pleasant. So, but I will tell you that the one bright spot in what I do consistently is finding homes for pets. It's amazing how easy that has been. Because I know we all, my dog's sitting right over there, we all love and cherish our pets. But the truth of the matter is, most everybody loves animals. I mean, look at your Facebook feed. You know, it's the cat, it's the dog, we all enjoy pets. So when a family does have a pet that you're worried about, very often the vet who you have been utilizing over the years usually has a cadre of volunteers who will be more than happy to foster until someone's found. There are lots of rescue groups as well who are more than willing to come to the rescue of pets, even if it's a one-legged, blind, hairy, flea-bitten chihuahua. It's not a problem. I have not ever had a problem finding a home for pets. So try not to stress about that. Just make sure that you leave for your fiduciary. Okay, go back and watch our first episode. Leave for your fiduciary the name of your veterinarian and who to contact. The other thing is someone had a concern about the dark web and violations of privacy and so forth if you put stuff online. Keep in mind that when the estate liquidator comes in to take all those pictures and post it online, it's not of your home, it's just of the item, and it's on their website. So there isn't any privacy, at least in my opinion, there's no privacy concerns because no one's going to make the connection that it's your item or your home. So I hope that answered your question there. Now to Leanne's most recent story of her A student who had everything greatly organized, the downside to that is I had a client who had a 5-page, 1-line list, single space list of all the things that are supposed to go to her daughter. This vase, these spoons, this candle, this whatever it is, a lot of stuff. And she predeceased her husband. And that's a difficult situation because if you're married and you have a vase, who knows at the death of the last whose vase it was? Was it mom's? Was it dad's? Was it someone gave it to her, or did it belong to somebody else? So this list was very helpful, but the challenge was a lot of the items were already gone. So the person who was entitled to those items became a little salty about that and felt like, well, wait a second, where is everything that I was supposed to get? And so it almost was overly organized because a lot of time had passed between where she did that list and took the photographs to when she actually ultimately passed. And so a lot of water under that bridge over those years. So you might, if you do get super organized, good for you, but keep it organized and keep it updated. And back to, I can't remember her name, but just give it away now, because a lot of this stuff they weren't using, just sitting in curio cabinets and so forth. So that's kind of the downside to being super organized. You have to keep it super organized and up to date. Now that we all have confessed that we have stuff and lots of weird stuff and that we know how much it costs and what to do with it and who to call and how to handle it, what are some closing words and advice for all of us out there? And then we're going to start answering some of your other questions that we haven't gotten to. But also keep in mind, someone mentioned the plastic bags and the clothing, the various charities that things should go to. Your senior move manager will know that. They are very good about knowing which local charities will take, medical supplies, how to dispose of pharmaceuticals, what to do with clothing, what to do with medical equipment. Those kinds of things is they do this for a living. So they're going to know the appropriate, or hopefully the appropriate charities who will benefit, local charities who will benefit from specific items in that home. So with that said, any closing words, Leanne?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we promised in the introduction was that we were going to offer a few tips. And the first one is, don't try to eat the elephant all in one bite. It is very easy to get sidetracked and to go down a rabbit hole. I encourage everyone to schedule an appointment with yourself. Select one of the easiest items, and usually the junk drawer, whether it's a junk drawer in the kitchen or in the bathroom, and make a decision of whether you're going to keep it, whether you're going to donate it, as long as it's in good repair, or are you going to throw it away? Once you have success with that, work on the next innocuous location, which might be a dresser. Start with one drawer at a time. Set your timer for 45 minutes, work uninterrupted, turn the music on, and stay in that one room, because what happens is we may find something, I'm in the bedroom. Now this needs to go over to the living room, or this needs to go to another bedroom. And then we get sidetracked and we start doing and finding another shiny over in a room, and nothing ever gets accomplished. So I encourage you to try those steps. I do believe that AARP has a great PowerPoint on decluttering. Reducing the stuff will reduce the stress. And if you are too overwhelmed physically or emotionally to tackle this elephant, we've talked about the National Association of Senior Move Managers website, and I encourage you to explore that. The bottom line is, what kind of gift do you want to leave your family? Do you want to leave a big mess where they have to hunt and find all of these important things and papers? They have no idea what your wishes are or what you want done with your things, and they have no way to access your accounts. Or do you want to have things organized, have your important documents in order, and you have made the decisions about your things while you still can? I wanted to address a couple of quick things in the comments. Some people mentioned I have a hard time getting rid of electronics. I know in our area, the county has certain locations and drop-off times for old electronics. There's a couple of companies that I work with who will do free pickups of old electronics, keeping all of those out of the landfill. And to Darby's point, there are many local organizations. We're all familiar with the big box organizations, but there are many local organizations who would welcome the treasures that you are ready to part with. And they may have a thrift store, but they may also help those who are getting back on their feet after some life events. And they may need some things like a nice set of dishes, some pots and pans, and things of that nature. There are also a couple of local entities. There's some organizations called Free Cycle or Free Stuff. You can find many of those on some of the social media outlets, but this is a great way where you can offer things to people and coordinate a pickup, and you don't have to worry about sending them to be donated or to be resold. So that's kind of the sum and long and the short of how we deal with stuff. And that was a lot to cover in a very short amount of time.
God, I love Mike. Mike, you're a trip. He's awesome. He just found his 5th grade homework that he told the teacher the dog ate. So, thank you all, obviously, for being here. It's been a great crowd and a lot of fun, and I hope to see you next time. And please, in your comments, I know that Michelle is going to have some closing comments about how to wrap up and what's next. And please fill out the surveys. You guys are a real inspiration for us, and we'd love to hear what you'd like to hear about going forward and any ideas for future episodes. And so please fill out the survey, give us your feedback, and thank you all for giving us your time today. And thank you, Leanne.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you both. This was a lot of really great information. So we recently here in St. Petersburg AARP hosted a shred event, and Leanne mentioned e-cycling. We had in our community Gadgets for Good. And so we had people coming out, and we recognized that there are important documents that we need to keep safe, but there are some that are outdated and we don't need, but we want to make sure to protect ourselves from fraud and identity theft. So make sure when you're getting rid of those personal documents with highly personal information that you're doing so safely. Make sure that you're shredding those. There's almost always a shred event offering free services out in the community. And if you can also look on your website, give it a Google and see if you can find e-cycling in your community. There are a number of nonprofit organizations that are offering the opportunity to safely dispose of your technology, like old iPhones or smart devices, televisions, computers. So there's a ton of information. And as I mentioned before, we're going to follow up with an email after today's session that's going to have hyperlinks to all of the resources that we talked about today, and then some. So lots of tips around decluttering, especially if you're downsizing. And I do hope that you will join us next time. And that's going to be on May 16th. We're going to be talking about aging parents who are resistant to accepting help. And so you don't want to miss that. Register for that so that way you get communications from us for the Zoom link to join us live, and a reminder email so you can put it on your calendar. And also a reminder that all of these sessions are recorded. And so January through March are already on the Aging Academy website. Check those out. This session, in case you want to go back to re-listen to something, or even better, share it with some friends, because what you learned today, if it's helpful to you, chances are it's helpful to your friends and family as well. So those recordings will be available on the Aging Academy website. All right. Thank you so much to Leanne and Darby again. And we hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day.